recording?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to think. We'll just keep it rolling. Keep it rolling. Conventions. We love them. They're an escape from our real world. But what happens when the real world comes to your convention? Grab yourself a snack, sit back and relax, and hope that tonight will not be your last.
When I was in my preteen years, my parents would take me annually to a pretty large anime convention close to where I live. I still attend it some years when I can afford it, but back then anime was one of my main interests and many of my friends would also go there to meet up, so I'd practically beg my parents to buy me tickets. One of the first years that I attended in 2005, I attended the Masquerade. This was a show that they put on where people in various costumes would put on skits or performances related to their favorite series. It was mildly entertaining, and it was a good late-night event to go when you didn't quite feel like leaving the convention yet on a Saturday night. A few months after the convention, I was walking around with my parents at the local Walmart when a large and tall and older man approaches me in the cleaning aisle. When I say older, I don't mean that he was middle-aged, just in comparison to me. I was only around 12 at the time, and he was clearly in his mid-20s. He came up a little bit too close to me, and I could see the fresh sweat stains forming on his shirt. He held his hands close to his chest and looked at me in a way that set off a few alarms. "Were you at the convention?" he asked me with an exaggerated eagerness in his voice. I nervously confirmed that I was there. I saw you there at the Masquerade. I was Link. I was playing the Ocarina on stage. I saw you in the crowd. You were wearing white cat ears on a bonnet." I pretended to remember him to be polite, but to be honest, that wasn't a unique act, and a few people showed up on stage dressed up as Link from The Legend of Zelda, playing a few songs on his iconic theme. Him remembering me, though, shocked me and made me feel somewhat unsafe. I wasn't terribly far from the stage, and while it's common for many girls to go around the convention wearing some form of animal ears, very few of them had on a bonnet like I did. He nearly pleaded with me to give him some way for him to contact me. I tried to rationalize with myself that maybe he's a nice person and that I was just uncomfortable because I was shy. This is an attitude that has gotten me into trouble a few times in my life, and it's taken me a long time to get rid of it. Plus, my parents were right there with me, and they would have said something if they saw him as a threat. I decided to give him my AIM handle, because people were still using that back then, and he couldn't really get other information about me through it. As he left, he went over to my mother and said to her, "Ma'am, you have a very cute daughter," in a voice that made me immediately regret not giving him a fake username. For whatever reason, my mom teased me about this as if she thought that man's behavior was cute and acceptable, or was supposed to make me feel good about myself. I saw him a few more times before we left the store, and I got the impression after a while that he was following me from a distance and smiling and waving every time I caught him. After a while, I just kept my head down until we were in the car. When I got home, he had messaged me a couple of times already, and we talked a bit. But when he started making not-so-subtle remarks about how he'd never had a girlfriend before, I decided to log off. For literal months after that, he would message me almost every day, never even seeming to pick up on the hint that I wasn't responding, until I eventually had to change my username altogether. So a few years ago, a friend invited me to go to an anime convention with her. I'd never been to one before and excitedly said yes. On the way, I asked her what a first-timer needed to know. What was the etiquette, picture taking, how much did the artist charge, would there be any of those gross furries, that kind of thing. She told me there were basically 3 things to know. Number 1, ask before you take someone's picture. Number 2, avoid the people holding free hug signs. And number 3, watch out for what she termed followers. I was about to ask her what this meant, but we had arrived at the hotel and had a mad scramble to get checked in on time and help her and her other friend get into their costumes. So it went unanswered. For a while, at least. Later on, when we finally hit the convention center, we're walking in and looking around, and she leans over to me and nods towards a shortish person with blue-streaked blonde bowl cut. As if he'd noticed across the room, he stares at my friend and at me. "See him?" she whispers. "Hardcore follower." I found out the hard way what she meant as I glanced up later during a conversation with some other cosplayers I met and saw him standing off a ways, staring, again. I met his eyes and looked away. He gave this inexplicably creepy vibe and I didn't want to encourage him. Assuming it must be a coincidence, maybe he overheard us talking and decided to eavesdrop. It's whatever. But then later it happens again. I'm sitting in a panel and I feel someone rustle over beside me, glance over, and it's him. I escape to the dealer's room, look up, and he's a few booths away, still staring. I head to the artist alley. He's a few tables down, this time making slightly more of an effort to blend in. I join in an impromptu dance party in the ballroom and realize he's weaving his way through the crowd, damn near feeling me up a couple of times. At one point I go out into the lobby thinking being more in the open might make him rethink things and leave me alone. Nope. He comes right up to me and doesn't say a word, just sits down next to me and stares. I eventually meet back up with my friends, and the friend who brought me looks around and says, "Don't look now, but a follower boy's watching you." "I know. He has been all day," I replied. The next day I stick with my friend and hers, until in the afternoon I get a headache and decide to go back to the hotel room to get some ibuprofen. Now this particular venue has the convention center separated from the hotel next door by a narrow little bridge over a small creek. I don't think twice about it until I go to walk across, and he's standing there. Just staring, not saying a word. Grinning like he knows I have to get past him to get where I'm going. I don't move, thinking maybe I'm wrong and he's just crossing the bridge, but no, he doesn't move until my friend appears. Then he heads back into the hotel. She takes me by a different route back to the room, though later on we hear him tromping around in the hallway. It finally takes her enlisting the help of some of the big, scary-looking cosplayers I befriended before to make him back off. I don't know what they said or did to get him to stop, but frankly, I kind of hope it was painful. This happened to me last year in June, I think. Anyway, I live in Perth in Australia, and I go to Supernova almost every year. At this time I was really into the Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus series, so I decided to cosplay as Nico D'Angelo. Anyway, I'm going on. When I was on the train to the convention, there was more than one person who was already dressed in their cosplay. But one person really stood out to me. There was a man who was sitting across from me, but 3 seats down. He looked to be in his mid-20s and had trousers on, a red polo shirt, sneakers, and his hair was kind of long. There were other people who looked as if they weren't going to a convention as well, and dude, did they know how to stare you down. But this guy seemed fine with it all. Well, I thought maybe he just doesn't cosplay. That's normal. Anyway, the guy saw me looking at him and offered me a smile. Not a friendly smile, more like the smile of someone when they see a waiter come out with their food. I reluctantly turned to smile and turned my music on my headphones up. When I got to the convention, I lined up for my ticket, and when I took to my right, the same guy is there offering me that smile again. I thought this was a little weird, but then I told myself he was just being friendly. Once I was in the convention, I walked around for a while, stopping at stalls, taking pictures with people. At one point, I got caught in a large crowd and I heard a click behind me. I turn around and there's that guy again, but he was taking a photo of me. He smiled at me again, and I calmly walked away, but I was freaked out at this point. I didn't see him for the rest of the convention, but what do you know? When I got onto the train to go home, he comes and sits directly across from me. I didn't make eye contact. I just listened to a mix of drowners and pretended I didn't see him. When I got off the train, I quickly called my brother to come and get me. When my brother got me, I told him straight away, and when I look up from my car window, the same guy is standing across the road, staring at me. He gives me that same smile and wave. Now this has been going on for a while, and I'm not going to name the convention. The truth is, convention security can only do so much to protect their patrons. 2007 to 2008, my encounter with the Creeper actually was pretty weird. I was staying with a group of 6 friends. We had 2 rooms side by side with a door in between that opened up. We opened up the room so we could get between for food and drinks. I was doing DDR and a few pianos when I noticed I was being watched. Blew it off as myself and 2 friends were walking to a Wendy's for lunch, but somehow I still felt I was being watched. On the way back, I caught sight of this guy with stringy hair and dressed like L from Death Note. I was at first impressed, but hell, he looked so out of place. I got into my cosplay. I was Tenchi and was walking to a photo shoot. Again, that creepy I am being watched feeling kind of wandered over me. My friend runs up and says this guy has been tailing me. She was my friend who was dressed as Washu were watching him. I was kind of spooked, and after the shoot I went back to the room to change, but I made sure to call one of the males I was rooming with was there. Thank goodness I will call him Koji because that was his RPG character name. Koji is tall and gay as hell, but he and his boyfriend were standing guard by the room doors. I was in the bathroom, Koji knocked, and I came out in a t-shirt and slacks. He said this guy was outside our door just staring. Koji's boyfriend Chris told the guy to get lost and leave his sister alone. I didn't see the guy until the next convention 6 months down the line. This other con, I was doing something for Hirogashi, and I walked with a few other cosplayers. We were in the same hotel but a different con, so yeah, weird, I know. I saw the same guy dressed as L doing a Death Note shoot. As long as he doesn't follow me, that's great. But then he followed me again, right to my hotel room, where this time my friends were waiting for him. The thing is, he stopped me right before my room to ask if I knew him, and I said no. Apparently he had been to a party I threw about a year ago. I was kind of weirded out because I remembered who I invited that party, and he was no one that I remembered. So I'm at the time 27 and single, and he starts to ask me out with this enthusiasm of some kid. Turns out he was 17. I had my rules, and though I looked 18 or something, I told this guy no. The whole con, he continued to tail my friends and I. He tried to even join my friend group for our Sunday dinner. My friends said he was harmless, but my gut said something else entirely. Later, he found me on MySpace and then Facebook. But I made sure nothing came of his pursuit. He basically continued his attempts, and this is when it became right out creepy. 2018 to now, to the present, I started doing a meet with fans of a show from the 1990s called Forever Knight. I got a message from a friend I will call Mickey, who asked what I was doing. I told him I was watching Forever Knight, and he decided to check it out, but I had no idea he was friends with that creepy guy from the convention. Over the next few days, I was working and was on my Facebook, and I saw I got a message from him. After I turned him down back in, say, 2007 or so, I thought he moved on. He was talking about how cool Forever Knight was, and I was awesome. I was kind of saying, okay, he must be new to the fandom, and you're a fan, but just don't message me, so that was when he started to use my real name, because as an administrator of my page, I use Forever Knight as a title. How did he know that? So I asked, and he told me Mickey was his roommate. I messaged Mickey and asked, what the hell? He said he didn't know anything about his history, and I was hoping to ask Mickey if Elle knew where I lived. Well, you host viewings, but those are on Meetup. He realized that he also had an account there too, and joined my group. I was so freaked out that I canceled the meetup until next month. I banned him from the group, and he messaged asking why he was banned. He also said he would make me understand we were soulmates. In the present, I ran into him at a convention in September, and he asked me again why he was blocked and banned. I told him I never wanted to see him again or request anything from my fan group because he just liked my stuff because I liked it. Apparently I was contacted by girls he dated and stalked for a while. He had issues and still had this unhealthy obsession with these girls to the point where they dropped out of the fandoms or just outright wanted to file restraining orders. But because he's not in a stable home, we can't get anything to stick. Follow your gut.